Because I know so many situations where I'm just so serious at work, and I feel that other people sometimes need a little bit of lightness and relief, but I never thought about actually being active about that and giving it. So that is the type of humor I mean. It's a humor that gives lightness and relieves people at certain moments. And I think we all know that, whether you're a student or at work, in projects, things go wrong, right? And when there's a tough deadline and then something goes wrong, it's even worse, and people are stressed. And humor is actually a great reliever of that stress. Now, it's actually proven to bring down cortisol levels, not when people laugh. And then also something wonderful happens, that the mind opens up and can be more creative. People who've had a good laugh are much better at solving puzzles. They are. I mean, not the jigsaw puzzle. So that's an amazing thing I found, because there was a time when I might have thought, okay, humor at work, or in important situations, well, people then become disconcentrated and make jokes all the time, but that's not what happens. A little bit of humor has a cleansing effect. No, it's really like for people, they have stress, they get relieved of it, and then they can attack anew. And that's why I think it's important to learn. So now you're probably wondering, well, how do you do that? Well, I have come with 4 tools that I use all the time. Those are tools, Elena, you said, what I believe is that people are not naturally funny. Well, some are, but if you feel that you're not, it doesn't matter, because the 4 little tricks that I have, I think we can all use them. And a lot of it is about the mindset, to be humor-aware. So these 4 tools, do you want to hear them?
Yes.
Yeah, so I thought. Tool number 1, I'm actually not going to uncover it immediately. Tool number 1 is interesting. Who of you knows Craig Valentine? I mean, not personally, but maybe you've heard of him. Craig Valentine is 1999 world champion. He's a Toastmaster. And, not all world champions or world championship speeches I love. But Craig Valentine is a speaker I really appreciate a lot. And he's very good at humor. And he's got this anecdote that he inserts into his trainings, and it's an anecdote where he goes to a fast food restaurant, a famous chain, but he says, for legal reasons, I cannot give you the name of the chain, but I can give you the initials, KFC. Now, the good thing about that is that people are almost sure to laugh. You laugh, I laugh every time again when I hear it. But why do we laugh? Why do we laugh at that?
It's unexpected.
It's unexpected. And that is really the first tool. The first tool is to surprise us. What Craig Valentine does with that anecdote, he surprises us. And that is actually, I'm really promising you that this is not about jokes, but I'm going to contradict myself a little bit, because this is a technique used by comedians a lot. And what you basically have, when he tells us that he cannot tell us the name, that's what in comedy you call a setup. So he sets us up to think something, and then, that's the setup. For legal reasons, I cannot give you the name. So he sets us up to believe that he's not giving us the name, and then he says, but I can give you the initials, and that's the punchline, KFC. There's another way you can look at that, and that is that you have the setup, I cannot give you the name, and this setup creates an expectation in us that he's not going to give the name, and then he breaks the expectation with the punchline. And that is how a lot of humor works. Another example, Rodney Dangerfield. Any one of you heard of him? He's a stand-up comedian who's no longer standing up because he's dead, but he was a wonderful comedian. His memory lived on. So here's how he looked. Rodney Dangerfield, and he's got this setup where he says, I and my wife were happy for 20 years. Let's have a quick look at that. What's the expectation he's trying to create, would you say?
Family.
Their marriage was very happy.
Yeah, at least for a time. Now, what could be the solution here? What could be the punchline?
And then it's finished. Then it's finished.
And
And then we met.
then we met. That's exactly Who said that? Did you know that, or what? Did you make it up?
I made it up.
That's super. Because comedians work a long time to get these punchlines right. If you made it up on the spot, you're a comedian, you can go out, you don't need this knowledge. So now, I told you this was not about jokes. So how can we use this technique of leading people into believing something that you're going to say and not going to say it? Well, I think we can use it all the time. Elena mentioned it. I'm the president of my Toastmasters club. And even though I'm German, we sometimes run late. So the other day we ran quite late. And then the general evaluator, or the Toastmaster of the evening, handed the floor back to me at the end. So I said, okay, we're much over time, but I've got very important club business still to share. I need some time. And then I said, and what I have to say is that we are now going to have a beer around the corner. And that was a relief. You're not laughing now, which is a shame. But at the moment, this is the thing. It's situational. So it was too fast. So what I said, I created this expectation that I'm going to take a lot of time, and then I said, basically, the meeting is over. And that brought a lot of laughter and a lot of surprise at the moment, and it brought relief. And that is how a lot of humor works. You know, it can take an everyday situation and lead people astray a little bit. Another example, just this Tuesday in our Toastmaster Club, a guy called Didier, he was evaluator, and evaluating someone, he had points for improvement, and then he set us to believe one thing and said the other. And he said, look, I really need to tell you this. I honestly have to say this. I really like your metaphor that you use. So that was similar. He just created this expectation that he's going to criticize something and then said, that was wonderful. And that also created a lot of laughter in the moment. So that's the first tool. You know, you can surprise people by just setting them up with very everyday, normal situations. And I hope now you didn't laugh at one or two of these scenes that I mentioned, but I hope you didn't feel that I bombed, because I think that's the thing. You're not telling a real joke. It's just an everyday situation, and if people don't laugh, well, you just get on with it. But the chances that you make them laugh are indeed very, very high. So that was technique number one. Surprises. The second technique is something that we all know, I think. Poke a little fun at yourself. It's self-deprecating humor is another word for it. And I think you've seen that a lot in Toastmaster speeches, in different situations when somebody pokes fun at themselves. People laugh, normally. And it's a very enjoyable thing. I had it at the beginning. I played with a stereotype about Germans not being funny, and you laughed about it. In everyday life, I see this all the time. French people do that all the time at conferences, and I'm not sure they actually do it systematically to get laughter, but they very often refer to that French accent. I've heard a speaker the other day, he spoke for 30 seconds and then said, by now you've all realized that I'm not a native speaker. Now, amazing, why does that make us laugh? Just because he's playing on the stereotype. And the good thing with stereotypes is, of course, that they are stereotypes. We recognize them. We recognize them. So this is the thing, if you poke fun at yourself, it should be something that people recognize about you. An example from the Toastmaster world, the Toastmaster meeting where I was, the speaker stood up, and then a few seconds into his speech, he had an anecdote where he said, this was 10 years ago, I was at university, and he's a little bit bald, he doesn't have a lot of hair, and he said, that was when I still had hair on top. That worked really well. That worked really well. And I told that anecdote to a guy at the Project Management Institute where I held a workshop and introduced him to that technique, and he said, well, I actually do the same. When I refer to the past, he would say, he's got a belly, and then he says, that was 10 kilos ago. And it brings a wonderful laugh. The thing is, of course, that you need to joke about yourself. If you do the joke about other people, then it's a completely different thing. I can joke about my grey hair, but not about bald hair. It works with a lot of things. It works with a lot of things. If you've got something obvious, special about you, think about that. That's the call to action here. Think about what's obvious about you, either your nationality or how you look outside. And then refer to it. It really is as simple as that. This is really quite fail-safe humor. And again, if people don't laugh, well, if you say, that was when I didn't have that much grey hair, if you don't laugh, I just get on and you're not bombing. Right? This also works very well with the sexes. Again, if you're a man, you better make a joke about men and not the other way around. Vit, a Czech guy living in Belgium, he at one Toastmaster meeting was supposed to do two things. Count votes, and I don't know what his other job was. But he forgot about one of them. And the way he introduced that when he didn't have anything to present was that he said, studies have proven that men are not good at multitasking. And that was a great second. So, that was my humor tool number 2. Poke a little fun at yourself. The third tool is called call the room. And that is something, this call the room is a word that comedians use, because they know that when something happens while they are presenting, something unforeseen, it's very wise to refer to what's happening. So here's an example again from the Project Management Institute, where they had a keynote speaker, a super speaker called Ricardo Nieto. He's Mexican. And he was presenting a bit similar to here in an auditorium in the university. And the auditorium went more like this. And the only exits were right behind him. 5 minutes into the speech, what happens? Somebody passes in front of him and leaves the room. And so he called the room and said, please don't leave, I promise I'm going to change my accent. And that was wonderful, because he's a professional speaker. Professional speakers, you will recognize that when you see them. When something happens, they will always do that. So, but he was very good because he not only referred to the situation, but he also played on the stereotype of his accent. So that was, double humor in that. But if he just would have said, where are you going? Or why are you leaving? That would have probably also gotten a laugh. Because that's how it works. That's as simple as it is. Refer to something that's happening and you already probably are going to put a little bit of humor and lightness into the room. The thing about this is, of course, this is about situations and opportunities, but you can actually plan for that. Because there can be so many things that can go wrong, right? Maybe here, the windows don't open. What can you say to that? For speakers or trainers, they always say at one point, when you speak, the bulb of the beamer is going to break. And so they recommend that you always have a spare bulb. So when that happens to me, I know what I'm going to say. I'm going to say, hey, they prepare us when that happens, so I've got a spare bulb at home. So that will be in the situation, that will be even more funny. And again, you don't need to make it very funny, just refer to it, and you will get a laugh. So that's the call to action. Think about the things that could happen. Any idea, what if a window doesn't open, what could you say? Any ideas? Or something else?
I love a song.
Voilà.
If you want to go out, you need to use the door now.
Yeah. Yeah. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. And you said, so what's your name? Stephanie, they talked about the sauna. We're in the sauna now. Another thing you could say, well, at least nobody can jump up. So a lot of things you can do. That was the humor tool number 3. How am I with time, Alena, by the way?
Oh, you're doing fine.
Yeah, does that mean, how many minutes do we have?
Let's get precise.
30 minutes left.
Tell me.
So, that was call the room. As we have, well, still 10 minutes left?
7.
7 minutes left. Any other ideas? Did you use this type of humor, calling the room in some way, to give us some ideas? Who's got some experience with that? No? Okay, it doesn't matter. I mean, it can be anything, that the computer doesn't work, or the beamer breaks, something like that. You can prepare it in advance, take some notes on what can happen in situations that you encounter. Now, the last technique, I call harvest and callback. And this is really something wonderful that happens, that if you used one of the first techniques, if you surprised people, or if you poked a little fun at yourself, or if you called the room, or if in some other way you created humor and lightness in the room, this magical thing happens that people know that it's okay to laugh. And that's particularly important if you're in a leadership position, or Toastmasters. If you're the Toastmaster of the evening, you are setting the tone. Then people depend on you. You are giving a signal what the evening could be like. It's the same when you give a training. And if in those situations you've made people laugh, then something magical happens, and that is that you will discover the humor is already in the room. You don't have to do anything. Humor will just happen because people know it's okay to laugh. Here's a very simple situation from the Toastmasters world. In a Toastmasters club in Brussels, we had a visitor, again a Mexican, called Heidi. Don't ask me why a Mexican is called Heidi. But she came, and at the end of the meeting, the president asked her, how did you like the meeting? Like we often do, right? And she said, oh, it was cool. Now for us, that's not funny at all. But at the moment in the room, it was so funny It was so funny because her style, it was unexpected. Now that's not really a joke, but we laughed at it. And that's what I mean now by harvesting, that you've already set the tone, humor is okay, now it's like an apple tree that has grown next to you, now you can just pluck the apples and accept that humor, either laugh along, or you amplify it. So if you now said as the president, if she's finished talking, Heidi, and then you say, yeah, we have cool meetings, that in that situation will be a guaranteed little add-on laughter that you can have. And now, what you can do is the technique of callback. Have you heard the name callback? What it basically means is, here now something happens, somebody says something funny, like Alena talks about the crappy times later, for example. And then, a little bit later in time, I call back to that, and I refer back to it. So in the example with Heidi, I would, maybe the next meeting she comes, I would say, okay, as a president you can say, are you ready for our next cool meeting, Heidi? Something like that. It's a very simple tool. And it's amazing that callbacks really work almost all the time. I put it at the end because it really is maybe the most simple tool. And it's a wonderful tool to use to call back to things that happened earlier. Because this is now our job. But what happened in the room, like with Heidi, that is the joke of the people in the room. Something that we laughed about today, if you refer to it in the evening and people laugh again, well, that is our job. People outside won't be laughing at that. And that is something communal. So that's my call to action here. If you are in a conference or in meetings or in the job, almost in any situation, take a piece of paper and a pen and write down the things where people laughed. And then write callback next to it. And then you can study later on in the day the things that people laughed at, and you choose one or two things that you think you can easily refer back to. That's the power of callback, and I promise you, people will almost always laugh all the time. And if not, Heidi, are you ready for another cool meeting? If nobody laughs, again, it's fail-safe. You just go on. So, those were my 4 techniques. 4 techniques that I think everybody can use once you get used to it. Let me give a summary. Here they are. Surprise us. Lead us to think one thing and say another. Poke fun at yourself. I can poke fun about the fact that I'm skinny, that I have grey hair, these kinds of things. My accent, punctuality, German punctuality always was quite well. So what is it about you, the stereotype of your nationality or your outer appearance, or things that you are known for in a group that you can refer to? Not very difficult. Then you can call the room, like Ricardo Nieto, who said, I will change my accent. And I would have needed to do that. If somebody came late now, I might be doing something like saying, is there anything you need? A watch, maybe? It's a good one. It's a little bit dangerous. That's the thing here. You really want to poke fun more at yourself than at others. But with that you get away if you laugh.
Do it.
So is there anything you need? A watch maybe? It's a bit dangerous, but fun. A lot of fun. So that's it. And if you did one of these 3 things, if you made people laugh, then really, you will see that humor is already in the room. People will laugh at certain situations. Let them know that it's okay. Harvest it. Make a callback. And if you use these things, you've seen, right? This is about situations and opportunities. So detect these situations, seize the opportunities, and you will bring lightness into people's lives. Thank you.